So we're going to talk about this game, but I want to talk about some broader principles as well. First of all, if you felt really good about this game, please still pay attention. The devil's in the details, and there are some techniques or approaches that you can learn from this game. And although they may not make a huge difference with this game, maybe they would help you do it in 6.5 minutes rather than 8 minutes or 7.5 minutes. You may not see a big difference with this game. They can make a huge difference in harder games. So let's try to learn as much from this game as we can, even though it's an easier one. And even if you can save 1.5 minutes, that could be huge, right? Like you take off 1.5 minutes from an easier game, and then you give that to a harder game. Now you're finishing that game rather than just guessing on the last 2 questions. So let's try to glean from this game as much as we can. Now, this game is an ordering game because they're asking us to order these decks or whatever, right? On the LSAT, there tends to be games that are either asking you to order things, to group things together, or do both. Now, there are some other random games, but in general, those are the 3 types of games out there. I wouldn't stress too much about the game types. So many people are like, Ben, I'm struggling with the games because I can't identify the type. If you're getting into that mindset, then you're going to have trouble forever because there are always going to be some random game that doesn't quite fit into any type perfectly. So then you're wondering, what do I do here? And it's better just to get used to grappling with things that are slightly new and different from whatever you've seen before. The LSAT repeats itself, so you're going to see games that are very similar to each other, but at the same time, stop obsessing about game types. If you're totally new to the LSAT, you're like, well, I don't know even what you're talking about, but there is a lot of obsession out there about game types. It's more important to think about the fundamentals. In this game, am I being asked to order things left to right or group them, which is more of a vertical thing, we'll see that later, or do both. In a lot of games, they're asking you to do a little bit of both, and that's all that matters, and it doesn't matter what type of game it is. In any case, this one is purely an ordering game because they just give us these 7 decks, and they say, exactly 1 deck must be built each week according to the following conditions, right? That makes it a pure ordering game. Okay, so I have my 7 decks, 1 through 7. I have the variables, I write them down. The first rule says G must be built at some time before K is built. This doesn't tell me where G and K are in the diagram, so I'm going to do it right below the diagram and say G dash K. That dash to me says, hey, look, G has got to come before K at some point, which means G could be immediately before K, but it doesn't have to be. If they had told me that G is immediately before K, then I would have no dash, right? Sometimes people symbolize this same rule with dots, G dot 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 K. Either way works. I tend to do dashes, so I'll do them here so that you know what that means when you see them in the videos, but this just means G has to come sometime before K. Now, what does this mean about G and K? K can never be first, right? Because G always has to come before it, so K cannot go here. G can never be last because K has to come after it, so G can never go there. Now, the Power Score books are out there. Has anyone read those? Some of us have. Okay, so one thing that they say in those books is, oh, come in here and write down the not rules, like K can't go there. I'm actually going to say don't worry about that because in general, when we encounter negative rules, we want to try to turn them into positive rules. We want to try to figure out what is going to happen rather than what's not going to happen, because what is going to happen is going to move the game forward faster. So don't worry about the not rules. Also, the more clutter you have here, the more stuff you have to filter through as you're trying to figure out what's happening. So to the extent you don't need to write something down, don't write it down. All right, next rule. L must be either immediately before or immediately after M. So here's a rule where L and M are together. The way I've drawn this, L has to be immediately before M, and they're saying it could be either immediately before or immediately after. So to remedy that, I'm going to put a little arc above this block to show that they could go back and forth, right? So L and M have to be together, but I'm not committing them to any particular order here. Could be LM or ML. The next rule, F must be built during week 5. If you did this, you're wasting time. That's shorthand for what the rule is saying, but let's just go ahead and make this visual. If F has to be in 5, I'm going to go ahead and just write it into the 5th spot, right? Our goal is to get as much into the diagram as we can. Even with these rules, notice I'm drawing them close to the diagram so that I can immediately, or at least mentally, put them into slots when I need to, okay? So if you have your stuff kind of drawn all over, or if your stuff is not neat, you're not going to go as fast through the games, or you're going to make mistakes and get things wrong for stupid reasons, which sucks, okay? J must be in 2 or 6, so J could go here, or it could go there. So I'm using the same arc that I used here to show that J can go back and forth. At first, a lot of times people see this and it makes them feel like J has to be in slot 2. It doesn't because of the arc, so hopefully over time you get used to that. I'm just trying to make this as visual as possible so I can mentally move stuff around in my head up here. Okay, now we've written down all the rules. There are 7 variables in this game, and I want to see if I've touched on all of them. So the first thing I do after I write down all the rules is just start going down this list. I start with F and I say, yeah, I have a rule that deals with F. I have something that deals with G. I don't have anything that deals with H. So I'm going to take and write H down here, and then I'm going to circle it, and I'm going to say, hey, that's a floater. There's no rules that affect it, but I don't want to forget about it. So in any case, let's keep going. So J, that's here, K is here, L is here, and M is here. So all of these variables are now here in my diagram, which is going to make it faster to go through the questions. Now, the games, and really the LSAT itself, comes down to one thing. Really, the whole test is testing one skill. 8 years ago, someone asked me what the one thing the LSAT is testing, and I couldn't tell them. I was like, well, it's testing a variety of things. Shut up. Don't ask such philosophical questions. But it is actually testing one thing in all 3 sections over and over and over again. And that is simply, we are going to give you some facts. You have to accept those facts as true. And now we want to know what must be true because of those facts. Now they may ask you what must be true, or what must be false, or what could be true, or could be false. Those are variants of the same thing though, right? You're given information and you're supposed to figure out what has to follow from that information, and by definition what doesn't have to follow, and therefore what could be true or could be false or must be false, right? My point in saying that is that we've been given information here, and by putting it all together in this place, it's much easier to figure out what must be true and so on, right? Now, we are going to ask ourselves over and over again, as we try to figure out what must be true, we're going to ask ourselves, who's left, and what do I know about them? So here, I just did that. I said, who's left? Oh, H is left. And what do I know about H? Well, in this case, I know nothing, so we don't need to worry about that question. But if you can remember these 2 questions, this will get you unstuck when you're trying to figure out what must be true, right? The one goal on the LSAT. When you're trying to figure out what must be true in a certain question, you're sitting there and they're saying, hey, what has to be true given this information I just gave you? And you're like, I don't know. Well, ask yourself, what variables are left? What variables have I not dealt with yet? And what do I know about those variables? I could help you ace any game without telling you anything. I could just ask you questions. You could be like, well, I'm stuck on question 4. And I'd say, well, what do you know so far? And you'd say, well, I know F is here. I actually know that J has to go in 6 in this particular question. But I don't know what else has to happen now. And you know what I'm going to ask you? I'm not going to say, well, did you notice this? I'm just going to say, who's left? And you're going to sit there and you're going to say, well, I still have to deal with G and K, and I still have to deal, oh, I have to deal with L and M? L and M can only go here. Yeah, I'm glad you figured that out. It wasn't rocket science. You figured it out on your own. The only problem was it wasn't in your mind, right? So if you just take a second to ask yourself who's left, a lot of times the next question, what do you know about them, just jumps out at you and you say, well, I already know something about them and I know they have to go here, and then the game continues forward, right? So that's how you make inferences. That's the magic sauce right there, which is just what the LSAT is testing. How do you figure out what must be true given what was said? Okay, anyways, kind of talking a lot. And you guys are really silent. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Does it feel like it's making sense? Okay. Yell at me if it doesn't. Say, wait, Ben. But in any case, just remember those questions. Now, the first question is a very common question. They're just saying, hey, which of the following could be true given what was said? And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab a rule and eliminate any that violate that rule. So what's the easiest rule to apply to these 5 answer choices in these set of rules? Yes?
F has to be 5.
It's David, right? David. F has to be 5, yeah. So you just scan down, and that's going to get rid of... It's okay?
C.
C, right? You guys see that? Okay. What's another easy one? Yes?
J has to be 2 or 6.
J has to be 2 or 6. So that's going to get rid of
B.
B, right? Because J is last. Okay, what's another easy one? Yeah.
LM has to be next to each
LM has to be next to each other. That's going to get rid of what?
other.
A, yeah. Okay. So then we have GK left, so it's got to deal with GK. That's going to get rid of E because K is first, right? So the answer's got to be D. Sound good? That's how I'd approach the first question no matter how much work I do up front. Just grab a rule and eliminate. Unless it's not this type of question. But I would say 90% of the time, the first question is going to look like that. Yes?
Sorry, I didn't hear the reason for E.
Oh, E. So we went to this rule right here. G has to be before K, and E has K first. So that can't work. All right, so that's question 1. Now, after doing question 1, I go and do all the if questions first. So in this case, I would do question 2, and then I would do question 5. And the reason I do the if questions is that the if questions add a new rule just for that question. And so they constrain the game a little bit more, right? And when they constrain the game, in most cases, you want to create a diagram just for that question. And you can use that diagram to answer non-if questions. So if you do the if questions first, then you have these diagrams that you can use for non-if questions, like questions 3 and 4. So you're not doing extra work, right? It's like, oh, I already did this work for another question that I actually needed to do it for. I might as well use that information. So we'll see how that works in just a second. But for right now, I'm going to go to question 2, because that's our first if question. It says, if G is built at some time after F is built. So question 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 7. Now, we know F is 5. They're telling us that G is built after F, right? Yeah. So, do we know... Now, I need you to put your blinders on here, because the biggest... I don't know if it's the biggest mistake, but one of the bigger mistakes that people make at the very beginning of their game's career, it's a career for you guys, at least for the next few weeks, is that they try to do everything at once. They have all these rules floating around their head, and they're like, okay, what has to be true? Well, I don't, and they're like trying to apply 2 rules at once or 3, and then it gets confusing, and they say, well, it feels like F has to probably be here, but you don't know for sure. I would suggest dividing and conquering. So I just want to focus in on G for a half second. If G goes, just G itself, if G goes back here, do you know where it goes? Okay, we do, because G is tied into K, right? Now, if you forgot about the fact that G has to come before K, then you wouldn't know that G goes here. You would just say, oh, it goes somewhere back here. And if that's the case, and that's going to happen to you on some occasions, I would suggest still writing G up here. Because what you're saying is still true. You're saying, look, G has to be back here, has to be in one of these slots. I don't know which one, but noting that it has to be back there can still be helpful. Because even if you didn't know that G goes there and K goes there, knowing that G is back here is going to tell you what about what other variables? Does it tell you something about J yet?
Yes.
It will tell you something about K, but let's assume for a second, I know I'm asking us to do a little strange thing here. I'm asking you to forget about the GK rule. What other variables does it tell you about? Yeah.
It tells you that J would be in space 2.
Not necessarily, because if you know that G is back here, right, J could still go there and G could go there. Yeah? L and M. Right? L and M can't fit back here, even though you don't know where G goes. So, this small thing, but it's going to happen in other games, where you're like, I don't know where G goes, I don't know whether it goes here or here, so then you just don't write anything down, right? You're like, well, I don't know where it goes, so I can't write anything down. No, you can write something down. You can say, hey, G goes there. Now, in this particular game, the next step is, well, what do I know about G? Remember the two questions? Who's left? What do I know about him? You come down here and you're like, oh, G has to be before K. That's going to force G into this slot and then K into this slot. And then we just learned something about these slots. We learned that this one cannot be J, right? So that's going to force J up into slot 2. Now what do we know? L and M are together. So they have to go in these two slots, right? We don't know what order. And then we have our floater left, right? So that's going to be H, which goes in 1. Is everyone okay with these steps?
Yes.
Okay. The long and short of that explanation is, ideally we'd see that G goes here right away and then put K there, but even if you don't know where G goes, put it up there because it's still telling you something even though you don't know which slot it goes in. Sound good? Okay. Now, the question is, which one finally must be true? I don't even read that until I've made the inferences that I can make. Just FYI. It's a must be true question. The LSAT has a tendency, it doesn't always do this, but it has a tendency on must be true questions in the games to make the correct answer something that is the last inference that you made. The last inference that we made was that H is number 1. So I would scan the answers for H first. You can save yourself, you're saving yourself 15 seconds here and there, and it kind of adds up, right? It's like, oh, I don't even read the other answer choices. H is in answer choice B. It says H is built during week 1. Yes, that has to be true. That must be the answer. Not even going to read the other ones. Sound good? Okay. Questions?
You said it usually affects the last inference that was made, or just occasionally, or?
Usually, yeah. So
Okay.
if it's a must be true question, I don't want to get too sidetracked by these tendencies, but this is what I'm thinking when I'm taking this test. I'm like, okay, I just made a bunch of inferences. The last thing that I figured out was that H is number 1, and that's going to be true for most people because that's how we had to get there, right? And then it's like, which one finally must be true? I'm like, oh, this inference right here is the farthest inference away from the initial clue, right? So test writers have a tendency to make that the correct answer because it's going to be harder to get there.
Rewarding people who go the farthest.
Yeah, who keep taking the information they've been given, taking the facts that they've been given and figuring out what must be true from those facts, right? Some of us maybe figured out the G goes here and K goes there, and then we figured out the J goes there, but then we stopped, right? And those people, you're going to have to do more work to find the right answer. All right, question number 5, our next if question. If G is built during week 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Side note, I always count those out in my head. On occasion, you may do 6 slots and not realize it, so just count them out. If G is built during week 4, okay, what should I add to this? Yes. F. Where should I add it? 5. Yeah, that's all. Okay. F is in 5. Okay. Now.
Put K above one of the last 2 slots.
K above one of the last 2 slots. That's perfect. So many people, I think, are going to sit there and say, well, I know K goes back here, but I don't know where it goes, so I'm just going to stop, right? Well, no, this is huge. If I put K here, what do you now know?
It's in one of those 2 spaces.
Wait, what?
It's in one of those 2 spaces.
It's in one of those 2 spaces. Yeah, what else?
L and M can go either.
Yes, L and M, right, are up here, and they're going back and forth like here, right? Now, again, I don't know where it goes, but that itself is huge. What does this now mean? Yeah.
J has to be in slot 6.
Yeah.
So we divide L and M.
No matter what, L and M, if it goes here or here, this slot is taken, so J can't go here, which means J has to go back here. So I didn't know where K went, but now I know J has to go there, which means K does have to go there. Right? Now I don't know how easy or hard that is, but I'm just curious. It's okay. These are just our peers. How many of us didn't write down anything for K here? Just stopped. Okay? Alright? We got 2 honest people. That's great. All right. So, anyways, we keep going. And what are the questions? What's the first question? Who's left? And what do we know about him? Who's left? H. And what do we know about H? It can go anywhere, right? So, because H can go anywhere, I'm going to go ahead and put a comma here, and then I'm going to put H. What this says to me, the comma says, hey, look, these are not in any sort of relationship, like they're not in any sort of order. H can go anywhere, and LM is going to go together, right? Yeah.
Can I backtrack super quick?
Sure, backtrack.
Briefly explain why J can't be in two. Oh wait, just kidding. I just got it.
You just got it.
I have to say it out loud.
That's okay. That's good. Yeah, because L and M, right?
Yeah.
No matter what,
It would be in the middle of all
it would be in the middle, and that's going to split that up.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. So, because H is a floater and L and M are floating back and forth here, they can go anywhere. We know we're done making inferences. Now this question says, there are exactly how many acceptable orders, any one of which could be the order in which the 7 docks are built, decks. How many different ways can we arrange these variables?
2.
Okay, here 2. How many people say 2? Okay. How many people? Any other nominations?
4.
Okay, I hear a vote for 4. How many people say 4? All right. How'd you get 4?
Because M and L are interchangeable.
M and L are interchangeable. Yep.
M, L, H.
That's right. So either H goes here and you have LM, or H goes here and you have LM, right? So for that reason, the answer is 4, which is then going to be D. Questions? All right, cool. Let's go to question number 3. Now notice we have these 2 diagrams, so we can use these to answer questions 3 and 4. Which one of the following is a complete and accurate list of the weeks, any one of which could be the week in which K is built? All right, well, question 3. K can be built when? After G, that's correct. So based on these 2 diagrams right here, do we know where K can be built? 7 for sure, right? It was proven to us twice. We only need it proven to us once. But K could be in 7. Boy, that's not super helpful. Although it does start to roll the ball a little bit. With that information,
Hey,
we can get rid of A because A does not have 7, right? Okay. Based on the original rules, what else do we know about K? Yeah?
They can't be first.
It cannot be first, right? So if G has to come before K, K can never be first. Does that get rid of any other choices? Yes, D has 1. Okay. Now at this point, we're down to B, C, and E. What is true about all of them? They all have...
2.
They all have 2, right? They all have 2, so we don't have to worry about 2. Is there anything that's unique about any one of them?
4.
4 is unique, right? I'm going to focus in on 4 because this could be a jackpot or it could just get rid of E, right? Like if K can go in 4, then we know that's the answer because none of the other answers have 4. If K can't go in 4, then we'll have to decide between the remaining 2. So, really quick here. I'll just get rid of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. F is in 5. If I put K in 4, can anyone make it work? We just have to make it work. Any bold souls? What was your name again?
Rachel.
Rachel.
I put L and N in 6 and 7.
Sure, let's put L and M back here. We don't care the order.
J has to be in 2.
J has to be in 2.
She has to be before K, so you can put it in either one.
Sure, okay. So I'll do whatever you tell me. 3, okay.
H and 1.
And then H and 1. Okay. How many people think that diagram works? Alright, some of us are not voting. How many people are not sure? Thomas, not sure?
I'm sure.
Oh, you're sure?
so.
Okay. So here's a random question for you. When you see a diagram, how do you decide whether it could work? What's the surefire test? Yeah? Yeah, how many rules are in this game? 4. There's only 4 rules. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's 4 rules. So if you comply with the 4 rules, you're good, right? There may be a day when you need to know for sure whether a scenario works, and that's the simple test. G before K, yes. LM together, yes. J in 2, that's fine. F in 5, that's fine. If you comply with all those rules, there's nothing else to worry about, right? Okay? It just made me think about attorneys for a second, right? Like if you have a client who's a bad guy, you just have to make sure that he or she has complied with all the rules. That's your job. My client, Your Honor, has complied with all the rules, so even though he's a scoundrel,
So if it works, that's it. It's the answer.
that's it. That's true on the LSAT and that's true in life. Okay, so we're done, right? We just proved that K could be in 4, so the answer is E. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
All right.
So was the key that you found what was different?
What was
and then
different?
You tested the one that was different.
Yeah, because it'd be a huge waste of time to test out like 2, right? Because 2 is in all of them. There wasn't more that was in all of them, but we could have done, well, 3. We could have done 3, but that would have gotten us down to 2 if it had worked, and if it hadn't have worked, then we would have gotten the answer. So I mean, you could have tested
But
3.
time, like you don't have much time to do that.
Yeah, you got to do something. But what's more important is that you move forward. I mean, it could have actually been really effective if 3 didn't work, because then we would know that the answer is C, just like we know the answer is E at this point. Yes. Yeah, we could have tested 6 too. Yeah, I just chose 4. I mean, it's like, oh, that stuck out at me, but yeah, 6 would be fine. Because if 6 had not worked, then we'd know it was B, right? Yeah. Okay, question number 4. Which of the following is a complete and accurate list of the decks, any one of which could be the deck built in week 3? We have a ton of diagrams, so I want someone to just start telling me as quickly as you can who can go in 3, even if it's not a complete list. What is a definite partial list? Yes. What was your name again? Madeline. Okay, Madeline. Who can go in 3 for sure? Did you say L and M? Yeah, because notice these are going back and forth, so they could both go in 3. So we have L, M. What else?
H.
H could go in 3 because of this one right here, right? Okay.
E.
Yeah, in this one we have G. So these diagrams have showed us that these 4 variables can go in 3. Are there potentially more variables that could go in 3? Without thinking too hard about it, potentially, but it doesn't matter because you just come here and you say, well, which answer choices have these 4? Because they have to have these 4 at a minimum, right? So we can get rid of A because it doesn't have all of these. We can get rid of B because it doesn't have L. We can get rid of C because it doesn't have L. D has G, H, M, L. Okay, it also has K, so maybe K is part of this list. E has L and M and H, but it doesn't have G. So the answer has to be D, and we don't need to take the time to prove that K could go there, although we actually already know that it could because of answer choice E from question 3. I didn't even think about that. But
Wait, can you say that last part?
oh, so the question before it
Yeah.
told us that K could go in. Oh no, it says K can go in 4. Never mind. But I guess if K can go in 4. Well, anyways. Oh no, this is a list of the weeks in which K could be built, right? So K can apparently go in 3 because it's part of that list. So there's another one. But we didn't need to take the time to prove that because answer choice D is the only one that has 4 that we know has to be part of that list. So that's the answer.
Could this kind of system work even if you did the questions in a different order, or is this why it's so key to like doing the if and then doing them in order?
Well, if we had done them in order, we would have done question 2. So we'd have this diagram, but we wouldn't have this diagram. We would have this one because this is from question 3. So in different games, doing them out of order is going to help you more, and in other games it's not going to make much of a difference. But here we have one more diagram that gave us H, and so then we instantly put that part of that list as opposed to discovering that later from question 5.
So how do you know which order to go in then?
I always just do first traditional question, then I do the if questions because they're going to require me to create a new diagram. But I can use that diagram for all non-if questions because they're universal questions. Thomas.
You answered my question.
I answered it. Okay, cool. All right, so the answer is D. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
All right. Now, I'm going to take 1 minute here. I got this from the book on learning. Remember I was telling you about that book? Apparently we remember about 30% of what we read 2 weeks later or a week later. 15 to 20% of what we hear. That's not very encouraging, right? But if you try to recall what you heard or read right after you heard or read it, you retain like 70%. Still sucks, you lose 30. But let's try to get this up to 70. So take a half second here and write down any takeaways that you had from this discussion, even if you felt good about this game, like, oh, one thing or two things that you would do differently on your next game, no matter how small it is. See how many bullet points you can come up with, and then we'll talk about it from there. Sometimes it can be hard to recall. It's kind of like, wait, I remember talking about something, but what was it? I forgot. Just try. It's that recalling that apparently sears it in. Wow, some of us have like 6 bullet points. That's amazing. Okay. Share them with your neighbor. See if you have anything that they didn't have or vice versa.
To start with the
So I just did question 1 first, questions, use the rest, and then do the rest of the For me, it's just remember the rules. So there's one the rules die. Because I screwed up the last one because I forgot to wait.
No, since yeah, do the if questions first, so you can use the if questions. These are part of so you can use the if questions to kind of information on the questions. Don't worry about question types. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's like I played 27 minutes.
Writing up the class is smaller.
So you're Are you enjoying it?
Sort of. I'm kind of learning it. So I think that's I guess that's sort of the first question.
Yes.
I thought that was, they like it. It gives you different diagrams.
Yeah, no, it's a little. It's a great professor. Sometimes some of the kids don't.
That's fun. I like it. I wasn't dealt. I decided to start. And two, it just kind of got in the way of my that was not something that I could go back to my marriage and say, well, I'm having fun. It's good around. What about you?
I was in singing. I had a good time. Had a good time. Overall, like,
All right, guys. I'm just curious, what things did you guys take away? And you can always add to your list as you hear things that maybe you didn't know. Anything? Anyone?
Use the diagrams for the other questions to show what's possible.
Okay, so do the if questions first, and then you can use those diagrams to eliminate or choose answer choices. Good? Yes?
If you're doing an elimination question, look for the thing that's unique.
Okay, look for the thing that's unique, yeah, to save yourself time in terms of which ones you're going to test. Okay, anything else? Yeah?
I have a question actually.
Sure.
So I used to be kind of scared to do if questions first because that requires usually going out of order, and then I'm worried about like getting them on the answer sheet.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
usually go through the whole game and then transpose the
That's right.
questions?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I do is I do the whole game, and then I bubble them all at once. Then I do the next game, bubble all at once. It's the same is true in logical reasoning. I'll do 2 pages of logical reasoning, then I'll bubble in all my answers. Reading column, same thing. You do 2 pages, it's the passage and the questions, and then bubble in all your answers. Yeah,
And
the
you
exception
lose
is
track?
no, because when
Like
you're
never skip
bubbling,
the question.
because when you're bubbling, you're just going straight through, right? Because it's like I did the questions out of order, but I've circled my answers, so then I just say, oh, 1 I chose C, 2 I chose D, 3 I chose whatever. Yeah.
So you just do it directly on your paper, like circle. And
Yeah,
then
just
you
circle,
bubble, because
yep.
bubbling takes time, right?
So I'm still gonna bubble, because I have to bubble. Am I understanding your
Yeah,
question?
like I just meant like instead of going through each question and then bubbling one by one.
Yes, I'm bubbling them at the end of the game.
Yeah. Okay.
Not at the end of the section. I'm doing one game, and I'm like, okay, let me bubble, in this case, 5 answers. Then I go to the next game. The exception is after the 5-minute warning, I might switch to 1-to-1.
Okay.
But then it's helpful to always, and this is true even when I'm bubbling them all at once, is I say 1C in my head, and then, so it's like you're verifying every time you're bubbling in that answer. Cool, good question. Yes?
While we're on the subject of bubbling,
Yeah.
would you ever bubble like the rest of the question just in case you run out of time?
Yes. So when you get to the end of the section, right, you have 5 minutes left. A lot of times you can just bubble in the remaining answers, like C or something like that. It really doesn't matter what answer you choose. And then erase as you answer questions. But it takes the pressure off a little bit, which can be immensely helpful, more helpful than the time that's lost by erasing. Because it's like, well, hey, if they call time at any time, at least I got something in there. So, yep. Other comments? Other takeaways? Yes?
Well, I have another question.
Go for it. Questions are good. Yeah.
So how it's graded. So you're going to be graded on how many you have correct.
You're going to be graded on how many you get correct. So if you don't bubble in something, you're going to get that question wrong no matter what. If you bubble it in, you have a 20% chance of getting it right. You're not punished for guessing. Yeah. Okay. Any other takeaways?
Ask the 2 questions, who is left, and what do we do?
Excellent. That's going to be a super common one. What's left and what do we know about them? Yeah.
LSAC has a tendency to test the last possible occurrence.
Yes, in must be true questions, in most cases the correct answer is the last inference that you made or that could be made. Hopefully that's the last one that you made. Yeah.
Keep the rules really close to the game so you're not looking.
Yes, keep the rules close to your diagram so that you're just looking here and try to declutter, right? The less you have written down is actually more effective because then you don't have to filter through so much, right? Okay, anything else? Yes?
Floater. I always forget about floater.
Yeah, floaters. Okay, so you write down all the rules, just go through this list and figure out who you have not noted. And then sometimes it's no one, sometimes it's 2 or 3 variables. Yeah. Okay? Anything else?
You circle them individually, right?
Yes, individually. So if there were another variable like T or something, I'd just put T and I'd circle it. Yeah. Any last takeaways? Okay. Cool. I think this game is one that can be done in 6 minutes. So if it took longer than 6 minutes, you may not know. I gave you about 9-10 minutes. So if it took you around 9-10 minutes, you might want to do this game again and see if you can hit it in 6 and try to do some of the things we did tonight. Okay? Yes?
So when you say do it again, how do we do that without just remembering the answers?
Well, you could just choose the answer. You could be like, I know it's D. But I would go and then, just be like, check it out, I did it in 4. That guy said 6. No, but like you wanna go through the process of proving it And even if you know that you're ultimately going to get to D, if you're like, okay, well, I got rid of A for this reason, I got rid of C for this reason, or maybe you didn't even get rid of answer choices because you knew, like this one, right? We didn't even look at the other answer choices because we knew that H had to be first, and we saw an answer choice that said H is first, so we're like, done. As long as you walk through the steps to get there, then I don't care that you know the answer. Yeah. Cool. The other thing is, when it comes to repeating games, let's say that this game, you felt good about this game, but you still think you could benefit from repeating it. It might help to repeat it in 4 days. So on Saturday or Sunday, you're like, have a little note to yourself, oh, I'm going to do this game again. And you do it again, but it's been long enough that by that time you probably don't remember the answers. But if it's a really hard game, then you want to repeat it the next day or even right after you did it. You do it, you watch the video, or you do it in class, you go home and you're like, well, I hope you're not doing homework when you get home from this class, but if you are a night owl, then you might want to just do it that night because the harder it is, the more you just need to kind of jump on it right again and get that into your head. Okay, any other comments or questions?
So you do like the game over and over until you get it all right?
So that's the most important thing, is to get them right in the right way.
So on time.
Well, I would still time yourself so you know how long it's taking you, but don't worry about that.
No, actually time is a problem for me, so.
It's a problem for everybody.
Yeah. So I just.
That is the problem on the test, actually. Yeah, like if we could get rid of time, our scores would all go up substantially. But when it comes to studying, what you want to focus on first is getting them right and getting them right in the right way. And if that takes you 15 minutes, I don't care if you show me, oh, this is how I did it, and I'm getting there in an effective way, because I know with practice you can get that fast. But if you're doing it in an ineffective way, an ineffective way would be something where instead of doing 3 diagrams for this game, you're doing 6 or 7 because you're testing out multiple answer choices, right? That's not efficient. So it's like, wow, you're getting fast at an inefficient method. You're never going to break 6 minutes. You're always going to be like 8 or 9. So we want to first focus on slowly getting them right in the right way, and then we know that with practice, you will get your speed up. Yes?
Do you have a suggestion for the balance between doing more games versus going back to games?
Yeah, there is sort of a trade-off. There's value in doing new games because you have no exposure to it. It really depends on how hard the games were for you. If you do a game and it was really easy, but it still took you too long, like I'm saying 6 minutes for this game, it took you 10, I would probably do some other games and give yourself some time, but then still come back and do this game. And if you do it in 7, that may be enough to just call it. Yeah, because the time is probably better spent on another game. But there is value in solidifying the process because it's going to repeat itself. Yeah.
So are you saying that like each section of games should take 6 minutes?
No.
Or 7
This
minutes?
game in particular, I think 6 minutes is a reasonable goal. One way to think about this is that the section is 35 minutes, at least for most of us. And that means you have 8 minutes and 45 seconds for each game. But the reality is that some games are 4 to 6 minutes, while other games are 13, 14 minutes. So getting this game down to 6 is really not so much for this game, but so you can have time to do the other games.
Yeah, I just didn't know if like timing myself while I'm doing them, like if I should always try and hit.
Oh, no, don't always try to hit 6.
Okay.
A lot of this is just you're timing yourself to know how long it took you, and sometimes these games are going to take you 25 minutes and be like, I'm never going to make it. It's like, no, it doesn't matter. It's okay. Just note it. Like, okay, I got them all right, or I got one wrong and it took me 25 minutes. Because 2 weeks from now, you do that game again, and you may do it in 12 minutes and still feel like that's too slow. But boy, that's a huge improvement over 25, and all we really care about is improvement. We don't care about perfection. Otherwise, it's just going to be painful. Yeah.
Should you go in the games, like if you have 35 minutes and you have a certain number of games, should you do those games out of order?
No, you
Is
should
there
do
a
the
way to,
games
know which
in
games
order.
are going to be harder?
In general, the games go from easier to harder,
Oh, okay.
in general.
Okay.
So sometimes people do the first game, then they'll get to the second game, and they're like, I really hate this game. It's like, moving on to the next game may just make things worse. But, you know, at the same time, sometimes the second game is harder than the third game. So if you give it a good go and you really don't know what the hell is going on, then maybe go to the third game, but give it a good try. Yeah.
If you finish a game in time
all of the games and time hasn't been called, would you ever go back and like redo the?
You finish all the games, time has not been called yet, you're twiddling your thumbs. I think in the game section, my hope is that you're actually always choosing answers that you're 100% confident about. If you ever feel like you're guessing, there's something not quite right about your process. That's different in LR and logical or reading comp. You might need to review something that even because you just didn't feel 100% about it, but you didn't have enough time to figure out why you didn't feel 100% about it in the moment. So hopefully in games you're not going back. Yeah. If you are going back, it probably means you just went too fast from the beginning. Like it'd probably be better not to finish and then nail everything that you get to. Any last comments or questions? You guys have a lot of good questions. We nailed a lot of stuff. Okay.